Welcome back to the Wandering Recklessly channel. I'm Destiny, this is Deacon, and let's go do this damn thing already.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wandering Recklessly. This week, I have been getting so many questions on my TikTok lives about how do you know where you're going camping next? How do you find these off-grid camping locations where not only is it free, it's dispersed, you don't have to worry. Most of the time, your neighbors aren't too close. You just have to be self-sufficient. You need to have the ability and the capacity to hold water, hold your wastewater, have electricity, and have time to really enjoy the area that you're in. So that is one of the most common things that I get questions about during my TikTok lives is how do you find all of these locations? And my simple answer is always Onyx. Onyx Offroad is the app that I use whether or not I'm trying to find my next camping location or I'm trying to find my next off-road adventure. Both of these things are so easy to find inside of Onyx because all of the trails are color coded. So they have a color scheme to where based on your off-road experience or the type of adventure that you want to go out and have, whether it be just a nice chill ride or go play in some crazy rock obstacles, you can find all of that easily located, marked, everything like that on Onyx Off-Road. Now, it also has the dispersed camping feature, which I found to be very useful whenever I go to visit areas like national parks or national forest areas, anything like that. It's not necessarily the most handy when you're trying to find like BLM locations, but if you are in like the national forest areas, it's super easy to see which roads you can go down. Now I say roads because sometimes, majority of the time, it is a dirt road. It's not going to be paved, and you're going to have to do your best research at seeing like the type of terrain that is there, whether or not you're going to be dealing with trees or if it's just a big open sandy desert terrain. Because when you live in a fifth wheel like I do, that is 13.5 foot tall, you have to make sure that you're going to have enough clearance both on the ground and in the air, right? Like if there's a lot of trees, which most of our national parks have a ton of trees or a lot of vegetation in the area, some of the dispersed camping areas are best inside the national parks for overlanding setups, smaller RVs, vans, and different car tent camping setups like that. Now, not always big rig friendly. So when I am looking at like a national forest area and say I wanted to stay, I stayed outside of Bryce Canyon, which is a national park, and in one of the dispersed camping areas there that I found on Onyx. And it had a lot of trees, a lot of pines, and just all of this. And I was like, I don't really think this is a good area for me to haul the camper to. And after going there, at the time I still had my Jeep Wrangler, my Rubicon, and I was so happy that I only took the Rubicon and not my other camper at the time, because it was so there's no way I could fit the camper through there. Okay. Now, when you're planning this out, my best thing is you can use the 3D feature on Onyx. You can take yourself to what it looks like the ground level and see. So for instance, like if you're on flat land, you can see that. Or if there are a lot of mountains in the areas, you can see that. Or a lot of valleys in the area, you can see that as well. Now, I will say it's not crystal clear because what thing is going to be 110% perfect. You don't know until you get there, right? But it gives you a good idea, and that was how I could tell, like, wow, there's a lot of trees in this area. Probably not the best idea. If I'm not 100% certain that the camper's going to make it, I always want to go and get eyes on it before I go any further. That's just my rule of thumb. You can take your risk based on your equipment and your machine. That is your life. But I want to at least go get visuals on it. But again, that feature of being 3D and actually seeing all of the terrain is super handy when you're looking for off-grid places on the onX app. Now, being out west and going to a lot of the BLM locations, obviously the terrain is desert, and it is going to 9 times out of 10 be pretty doable in a camper. You're just going to have to watch out for like your occasional swallow standing there and just different things, right? Not necessarily big tall trees like you do inside of a lot of the national park areas and stuff. Now, still use your caution. Again, I always put on the 3D feature, and I always show like what does the terrain look like. So let me show you this area since I was already here. This is one of the BLM locations that I found in just north of Lake Pleasant. And you can see I actually mapped out, that was where my campsite was. But back in the distance, you can see the tall mountains there. So generally speaking, it's going to be pretty flat. But after getting there, there were some obvious ruts from, you know, different off-road vehicles, weather, different things like that that you had to navigate, but much different than there being a ton of trees, you know. So when I'm looking at a BLM location on the onX map, this is also a very good place to show you. So again, this body of water that you'll see is Lake Pleasant. And the yellow area that you see is all BLM land. Okay, so there's no, in this particular area, there's no public or privately owned spaces. So there is the, what do they call that? Yeah, it's still Bureau of Reclamation around the lake. And then the Lake Pleasant Regional Park. But I'll show you how it looks on here. So all of the green area down here is where it's like the Lake Pleasant Regional Park. Okay, you can click on it and then it brings up the boundary of whatever area that you clicked on, and it'll show you what the name of it is. Okay, now if we pull that down out of the way, you can see this area right over the body of water. So that's where I clicked. It says, let me go in a little bit further, the Bureau of Reclamation. So the lake itself, parts of it, and the surrounding areas there that you can see outlined is the Bureau of Reclamation. And then if we zoom out just a little bit more, you can see the yellow outlined area. That is the BLM land, okay? BLM stands for Bureau of Land Management. That is all of our free public lands. Technically, the Bureau of Reclamation is too, but sometimes there can be some different rules in there. You can check all that out on the website. I'm not gonna talk about those specific differences. But when I'm looking at my onX map, the yellow areas is what I'm looking for, and then I further investigate in that. So you can see that there's yellow, there's a faint blue, which is the Arizona Trust lands, and then it goes back into the yellow area, which is the BLM land. Now, when you zoom in, some trails, so this is the back way to Crown King. I did do that. There is a video on this channel that has that, and I think it was titled Having Confidence Off-Road When You're Driving by Yourself, because I did do that one by myself. I didn't meet anybody there. I just went as far as I could. There was an obstacle that I probably could have made, but it wasn't worth risking because I didn't want to have 5 hours of a walk back home, you know. So when you zoom in, you can see that the black route here is what they ranked the back way to the Crown the King. So that is technically an 8 out of 10 trail, right? No, sorry, 7 out of 10. So it's somewhat difficult, okay? It's pretty difficult is what it says. And this person says several steep rocky climbs without a bypass are present. Winter snow melt can change the conditions, and erosion for sure. I did see that a lot. But then the surrounding areas here are just smaller little like trails, again, like dirt roads in that area. So when I found that on the map, again, just north of Lake Pleasant, I was like, that'll be a perfect place. You can also do a Google search of BLM land north of Lake Pleasant, and I forget the actual name of that OHV area. But there is a staging area there. I forget the actual name of it. But if you do visit that location, since becoming a trail guide with Onyx, I did map out 2 of the trails there. So there's Pleasant Burrow Drive and then Hee Haw Trail. So they lead down to overlook the lake, and they are so gorgeous. So be sure to check those out when you are there. But as far as the actual map on Onyx, there are a ton of features there, okay? And this video is just, I wanted to put out that is like my general rule of thumb. Those are what areas that I'm looking for. Again, I start for what area is yellow, because I know that is BLM land. Where is it at? Where is it located? And then I zoom in and start making finer details and finer decisions from there. Now, when you're in like a popular city like Phoenix, there's not going to be a lot of BLM land around there. And so that was why I was like, okay, let's zoom out a little bit more. Let's find an area where they have some BLM land and then go there. Now, while I was there in Phoenix, I also spent some time in the Boulder OHV area, which is back down off of 74. Yes, back down off of 74, and beautiful staging area, beautiful camping location. There were a lot of dispersed campers there who were also aligned with off-roading. Everyone had their vehicles there. It was awesome. So I do recommend that location as well. If you go to the area just north of the lake, know that it is a very long road. It is a very long gravel road. You can make it with your big rig. There were several big Class A's, but there are some steep hills, and there is a lot of washboard in the area. So it took me about, maybe 20 minutes or so driving the truck just back to the main road. And then the Boulder OHV area is a lot closer to the main road. I think the staging area is like a mile from the main road. So as far as accessibility, that is a good place. But in peak season and things like that, that area will fill up very fast. So just know those things. There is a little bit more room out just north of the lake, but those are 2 of my favorite areas that I found above and in like Peoria, North Phoenix area. And hopefully that guides you in a little bit better direction of what I'm looking for when I use Onyx to find my next off-grid camping location. If you have any questions, feel free, drop them below in the comments, and I'll do the best that I can to answer them. But I highly recommend you just downloading the app. You can start with like a free version and then just see all about it. And then if you do purchase the Elite membership to where you can see all of the public and private lands and all of those boundary markers, you can use Trail Guide 30 for 30% off your membership. So be sure to check all of those things out. Like I said, please drop any questions that y'all have down in the comments, and I'm happy to help share with what I know and how I use Onyx and just my personal experience, the cool places I've found. So, as always, guys, tune back in next week for another episode of Wandering Recklessly, and let me know if you have any questions down in the comments.